Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation by iBeam Materials. Vladimir Matias, founder and president of iBeam Materials, will be presenting. And I think it's really an interesting technology because one of the key problems with LEDs has been that you have to grow them on, let's say, sapphire substrate. But Vladimir and his team are trying to change that and make it possible to grow LEDs and similar substrates on substrates like glass or foil and also to so go to. So I'm going to leave the stage to you, Vladimir. You have up to 20 minutes. I will give you the heads up, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to put in of your talk, and then the room remains open for Q&A. So on you go.
Hello, my name is Vladimir Matias, and I'm from iBeam Materials in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present today. I'm excited to present our materials breakthrough for making large area sheets of gallium nitride-based LEDs. Not only is this technology transformational in how LEDs are manufactured, going from small wafers to very large scale, but also in enabling super bright, paper-thin, flexible displays. Here's a brief outline of my talk. I want to first introduce iBeam Materials, our company, then describe some of the challenges of using LEDs in displays, and then I will describe briefly only the technology for making what we call GaN-OX, GaN-on-X, a new platform for making LEDs, and then implications for LED manufacturing as well as in use for displays and in lighting. Our company, iBeam Materials, was started about 10 years ago as a spin-out from Los Alamos National Laboratory and is located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're the leaders in ion beam crystal alignment technology, where one deposits a film with an ion beam during deposition, which allows us to align the crystallites in the film during growth. This is a way to make large area epitaxy. And epitaxy is where one deposits a material in atomic registry with the substrates. Traditionally, epitaxy is done on single crystal wafers. This technology was actually first introduced and developed for superconductor wire manufacturing, where one deposits epitaxial superconducting materials in long length via roll-to-roll processes. Today, there are about a dozen companies around the world making thousands of kilometers of these tapes. It's one of the largest applications of epitaxy in the world today. iBeam is currently using this process to develop templates for epitaxial growth of gallium nitride using our roll-to-roll reactors. Our leadership consists of myself and then Julian Osinski, who is a veteran of the opto-semiconductor industry, and Klaus Kunze, who is a veteran of chemical coatings industry. Light-emitting diodes, or LEDs, today come essentially in two forms. Inorganic LEDs, that I will call iLEDs, are extremely bright and efficient sources of light. They are very robust and stable materials. Today, they come typically as points of light because they are coming from tiny chips. This is because they're expensive to fabricate because of the epitaxy that is required. Because they're such tiny points of bright light, they produce a lot of glare, and it requires optics to diffuse the light. Consequently, there's a lot of costly back-end processing for iLEDs and individual die packaging and handling. On the other hand, we have organic LEDs, or OLEDs, which are made in sheets. They're very inexpensive per unit area, and they're not nearly as bright. In fact, they're 100,000 times less bright than the iLEDs. And they're also environmentally sensitive to oxygen and moisture. Today, iLEDs are primarily used in lighting as well as in backlights for LCD displays. Organic LEDs or OLEDs are primarily used for emissive displays. To make displays today using iLEDs is still rather challenging. These are the so-called micro-LED displays. There are basically two approaches: monolithic integration and mass transfer. For small displays, such as micro displays, typically up to about 1 inch in size, one can take pieces of an LED wafer, since LED wafers are typically 6 to 8 inches in size only, and integrate LEDs by coupling them to a backplane. Because of wafer size limitations as well as cost, for larger displays one resorts to mass transfer of pre-singulated chips from a wafer and assembling millions of these tiny chips on a display backplane. There are a number of talks at this conference on these approaches. This is rather challenging since one requires 7-9 yields in the end, with tens of millions of chips that need to be positioned within 1 micron accuracy and bonded reliably. But what if we could have iLEDs made in large area and low-cost sheets, such as is done today for OLED sheets? That is, what if we could have the best of both iLEDs and OLEDs? Brightness and robustness of iLEDs and large area sheets of OLEDs. This is not possible today and would require a new innovation. Well, this is exactly what iBeam Materials' breakthrough is. We were able to develop a revolutionary new process where one does not need a single crystal wafer for deposition of epitaxial indium gallium nitride LED materials. For the first time in history, high-quality epitaxial opto-semiconductors are deposited directly on a non-single crystal substrate. In this case, we use the metal foil, but other substrates such as glass and ceramics can also be used. We call this process GANOX, where epitaxial GaN material is deposited on X, and X can be many different materials. For this, we utilize an ion beam process, shown here on the bottom left, where the ions orient a nanometer thin layer on the top of the substrate so that all the grains are aligned. The template shown schematically here in the middle then replaces the single crystal sapphire wafer. We utilize inexpensive metal foils which are as rolled and still rather rough. Before depositing the ion beam aligned layer, we planarize the surface by chemical solution deposition, creating an atomically smooth surface. On the right, you see the cross-sectional electron microscopy image of what the structure looks like. And on top, you see our first LED device, and you can see the rough metal foil through the gallium nitride material. The gallium nitride and LED deposition was done by our collaborators at Sandia National Laboratory in New Mexico. So you might ask, why is replacing the substrate significant? After all, we are using the same gallium nitride material for LEDs that have been used in industry for the last few decades. Well, we believe that it is truly transformational in that it transforms how LEDs are manufactured and how they are used. Here we show the devices that we have made using epitaxial gallium nitride on metal, LEDs and transistor devices. Based on the threading dislocation densities that we observe in our gallium nitride material, which is similar to that of gallium nitride on sapphire, we believe that we can ultimately reach the performance of LEDs on sapphire, although we're not quite there yet, and we have to improve our light extraction efficiency. On the right side, you see our first in the world high electron mobility transistor, fabricated directly on metal foil. Ultimately, we would like to integrate the gallium nitride LEDs with the gallium nitride transistors. As I said before, Ganox platform first transforms how GaN LEDs can be manufactured. And this primarily means scale. Standard epitaxial deposition relies on single crystal wafers. These are typically scaled up by going from 2-inch wafers to 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, and so on. By using the Ganox process, however, non-single crystal substrates can be utilized, and these allow one to go to much larger areas. All we need to do is to pre-deposit an ion beam aligned layer on top of this non-single crystal substrate to transform it to a template for epitaxy. The ion beam deposition process can be scaled to very large areas. No longer are we bound by small, rigid wafer sizes of the materials used to lattice match gallium nitride. Instead, large area substrates are now possible. This then implies that we can reduce the cost significantly and enable new functionality. In particular, depositing LEDs on inexpensive and flexible, robust metal foil enables roll-to-roll manufacturing of LEDs. Instead of using the single crystal wafers, as is done in industry today, the Ganox process can be scaled and automated to kilometer-long rolls of metal substrate. That is a scale up to 5 orders of magnitude larger than the wafers. And this reduces the cost ultimately by more than 20-fold. It also improves the deposition process as the substrate materials are better thermal conductors, leading to better wavelength uniformity of LEDs, among other things. As I said at the beginning, GaN epitaxy is expensive. The industry standard deposition process is metal organic chemical vapor deposition, or MOCVD, which is rather expensive. Current cost of 5-micron thick epi-GaN LEDs is about $2 to $3 per square centimeter. Here I plot on a log scale the cost of the epi LED materials. You see that there is plenty of room at the bottom as you compare to the what I call the practical lower limit of materials costs. Now, 20% of the current cost is just the sapphire substrate cost. If we go to roll-to-roll or sheet-to-sheet MOCVD scale-up, one can reduce the cost by, we believe, at most a factor of 4 in keeping MOCVD. However, by going to a hybrid process where one uses a lower cost deposition process for the gallium nitride buffer layer, one can reduce the cost, we believe, by another factor of 5, bringing us to cost competitiveness with OLED materials deposition cost. This means that mobile displays can now be made using this micro LED technology. However, it does not stop there. There has been a lot of recent interest in R&D community in depositing gallium nitride by other low-cost methods, including deposition of the device layers themselves. Future developments based on the current ongoing R&D would potentially bring down the cost by another factor of 5, making LEDs 100 times less expensive than the current learning curve shown here at the top. At that point, micro LEDs become even less expensive than OLEDs, and large area displays become a possibility using monolithic integration. The second thing that Ganox changes is how LEDs can be used. Up to now, LEDs have been primarily used as individual devices which are surface-mounted, so-called surface-mounted technology, or SMT. By depositing LEDs in large areas, now all of a sudden large area and large scale integration becomes possible. Optical devices have already been integrated on wafers in industry, but not monolithically with LEDs on a large scale. We believe this advance in large-scale deposition of opto-semiconductor materials will lead to completely new areas of innovation, similarly to how innovation brought whole new products and industries when transistors were integrated on a large scale back 60 years ago. Of course, here we are discussing micro-LED displays. LEDs on large area substrates will allow for monolithic integration of micro-LED displays without transfer. This is significant as we believe it will lead to much greater yield and reliability for the LED devices as there is no mechanical transfer. If needed, one can also build in redundancy. TFTs can then be deposited over the epi-GaN sheet, but even better, by going one step further, one can integrate the gallium nitride FETs made from this epitaxial sheet of gallium nitride material, since we have the whole area available for integration. In this way, the whole display can be monolithically integrated in a single plane. There's no more a front and back plane for the display. One can use quantum dot technology, for example, to convert blue light, so make the whole sheet of LEDs blue, and then pattern red and green quantum dots within each pixel by either doing lithography or some kind of printing technology, depending on the size of the display. Unlike mass transfer micro-LED displays, there are some unique qualities and capabilities inherent to these monolithically integrated LED sheets. First of all, as I mentioned previously, we have a paper-thin, flexible, and thermally well-conducting substrate as the display platform, giving it unique properties for these displays. It is literally like a thin sheet of paper. LED sizes can also be larger than is typical for mass transfer, since the whole sheet contains epi material, which means that the efficiencies could be greater as well. When scaling to higher resolution, cost of the display emitters stays essentially the same, since they're just patterned on a finer scale within the sheet of LEDs. This in turn allows for future 3D display technologies. Light-filled displays would require billions of subpixels or voxels. It becomes practically, I would say, impossible to do this with a mass transfer approach. By making further use of semiconductor materials that we have available in this sheet, we can also integrate sensors and other devices into the display, as well as other emitting devices that could yield better color gamut. The field of GaN device integration goes beyond the mobile displays that were discussed here. Of the currently existing markets for gallium nitride devices, there are a number of areas where this can be applied. Firstly, there are displays such as AR, VR, and automotive, as well as wearables, that are available for monolithic integration technology. But eventually also large displays and signage become possible, as well as lighting applications and power devices. So how would LED sheets change lighting? Today's LED lighting is derived from tiny chips and then elaborate packaging of LEDs, going to elaborate luminaire system to diffuse those points of light. All of that is really non-ideal, but it works. It's also expensive balance of system. There's still a lot to be done in LED lighting, to be sure. Fluorescent tubes containing mercury, for example, are still hard to replace as they are rather efficient. They still dominate much of the commercial lighting space. But more importantly, there are new opportunities in lighting to go beyond the form factors and the luminaires that exist today. I think new forms of light will be possible once the light sources are no longer confined to the zero-dimensional objects that we have today and go to one-dimensional strips or sheets of light. And integration of lighting with furniture and architecture becomes more easily implemented. In summary, I hope I have shown you that we have created a completely new disruptive platform for LEDs. The ion beam process that we utilize enables us to create single crystal templates on non-single substrates such as metal foils and glass that enable one to deposit gallium nitride-based LEDs and other GaN devices in large areas on these substrates. Monolithic integration of LEDs and GaN switching devices in large areas is a particularly attractive way to make flexible, super bright, and paper-thin micro-LED displays. As this is still very early in technology development and commercialization, we are currently seeking strategic investors and industry partners. And thank you for your attention, and please contact me if you would like more information about iBeam and our technology. Thank you.
The talk will have started on time, so please feel free to jump into the other talk. I just, just the stage is open for questions. We have some coming in, but I will kick off first. Maybe you can stop sharing your slides now, actually, Vladimir. So the question is, what is actually the scale of this technology? I mean, what kind of web width, or what kind of web speed are we talking about? Just to give the audience a sense of the technology readiness level.
Right. So what we do, which is the template production, we can do at very high speed. So we can do up to kilometers an hour. The problem is really in the gallium nitride deposition. If one requires this thick layer of gallium nitride, then that is the bottleneck. I have some slides on this, but in the interest of time, I will not go into it. We have a hybrid approach where we use something like a high rate deposition approach using hydride vapor phase epitaxy, HVPE, where one can deposit literally hundreds of microns per hour. So then one can do this in just a minute or two, and then it's a lot faster to do the buffer layer of gallium nitride. So currently, I should say, nobody, including not us, has made roll-to-roll gallium nitride. That still remains as our next challenge, and we're now in the process of trying to raise funds for that. But that would be the next task.
Okay.
So that hasn't not been accomplished yet.
Yeah, understood. Well, thanks for that clarity.
And then small samples.
The second question I had is, I know this is early days, and it is not totally unfair to compare you with an industry like LEDs, which has many, many years of accumulated experience. But what kind of, just at sample level today, what kind of LED quality do you get when you do it with your intermediary layer? And of course, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, but just to give a sense.
Yeah. So far the samples have been done sort of by exchanging with another laboratory and so on. So it's kind of, as you say, non-optimized yet. What we have seen in terms of photoluminescence, about 70% of the signal compared to sapphire LEDs. So we believe that ultimately, based on the threading dislocation densities, we can actually get to sapphire performance.
Yeah. We have a question from Brad from Lamar Advertising. And his question is, while it seems you are focused on the very tight resolution displays, do you see this innovation being a replacement to through-hole style LEDs as well? Requirement would be 9,000 nit output, 100,000 hour lifetime.
Well, I think yes. Certainly the brightness is achievable. Very, very high brightness is achievable. We're not necessarily focused on the type of resolution. This is very early, as Kasha pointed out. This is still very early. We're just developing the platform technology for this. We believe that you know, tens of thousands of nits, 100,000 nits is definitely, achievable if that is needed, and long lifetime, of course, as well. I think LEDs, gallium nitride LEDs, have been shown to be able to do this.
Well, just to follow on from Brad, and I think at the next break, Vladimir, please go to the networking lounge. I mean, hopefully Brad will be there and you can continue. But he's saying most of their displays, and this is outdoor advertising displays, use a 16 millimeter to 20 millimeter pixel to pixel resolution. So very, very large pixels, actually.
So, okay, so we are focusing more on the smaller displays, such as the phone display, because that's where industry has a real problem. For the large displays, they can do the transfer, okay? And also, our costs scale with area. It's like OLEDs, so just like an OLED sheet, our costs scale with area. They don't scale with resolution. So we can get higher resolution by scaling back. So that's maybe the answer to his question about why are we focused on the smaller displays. So we believe that our technology is particularly well suited for this display size that is larger than the micro display. So the micro displays can already be done monolithically, and now our substrates allow this kind of mobile cell phone, tablets, laptop displays, ultimately going to large displays as well when the cost comes down. But the cost will need to come down this 100x that I spoke about.
Yeah.
When that comes down, then you can do really large area displays also at reasonable cost.
Yeah. You've got 1 minute and then the room will disappear. Final question. Again, you can continue the discussion in the lounge. How do you actually intend to bring the cost down as you projected?
Okay, so we have a specific plan for that. Maybe I'll share a little bit very quickly. So we have a particular scale up process. So right now the cost of epi is about $2.50 per square centimeter. What we want to bring it down to ultimately 25x in this projection, but ultimately even more than that, by doing roll to roll first. And so we need to demonstrate that first, and then doing the scale up, and then introducing this hybrid I described, in particular this HVPE process, low cost process plus MOCVD, and that can then be further. Anyway, I can discuss with people who have an interest more in the details of this.
Sounds good. So before the room disappears, Vladimir, thank you. Very exciting work. I'm sure there is a lot of potential in this, and we're only seeing the beginning. Really exciting. And I would say, please join the networking lounge at the break, I think after the next talk, and then maybe people can follow up with you there. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
enjoy
Kasha.
the